Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Driven Wyld. Today we are talking about, we put 7 Uber drivers in one room. What we found will shock you. So I have been recommended this video by a lot of people, but primarily I was actually recommended this by Joseph Mayo, founder of GigTax, to talk about this. And it turns out they may have solidified the accusations of algorithmic wage discrimination in the gig economy. So with that said, we are talking about everything that's being said in this video, how it actually is for DoorDash, Uber Eats, and Grubhub drivers, Uber drivers, Lyft drivers, really any gig app drivers as a whole, as well as their corresponding companies and everything in between. So with that said, let's get started.
Why does Uber win? Well, because it's rigged in their favor, right?
In 2023, a law professor published a paper with shocking implications. Her research...
Okay. And I really shouldn't be surprised that this is coming from a channel called More Perfect Union. The reality of this is that a lot of what these people are trying to accomplish is by turning independent contractors into employees. And honestly, that's only going to hurt the gig economy. While I understand that this is going to reveal something problematic for the gig economy, and I will probably agree with that much, the solution is not to put an employee solution on an independent contractor problem. We have to solve the problem as the gig economy is going to grow.
Found that tech firms like Uber and Lyft were using secret algorithms to dictate what drivers earn, based on factors we can't even see. She called it algorithmic wage discrimination.
Yeah, that's been happening for a while now. This isn't new. This has been a problem. I actually made a video talking about how Dara Khosrowshahi exposed himself doing that and admitting to that.
And this technology, or revolution, isn't restricted to rideshare companies.
Once that technology is in there, they can raise prices. On a hot summer day, I want a lot of ice cream, I want lemonade. They're running low, they can raise the price.
That's typical supply and demand, and honestly, yes, I agree that there is a point to where it gets out of hand and there should be regulation on that, but that's less about the drivers getting paid, more so what they're charging.
The price of milk, even your paycheck, the very fabric of our economy, all controlled by invisible and unaccountable algorithms. So about a year ago, I started reaching out to the companies.
Does a driver's driving history have any impact on the amount of money they are offered for a ride? Probably, but they're probably never going to admit to that, or if they are, they're probably going to hint at stuff like that to their shareholders, but not to the people who are actually driving. Because why would they?
They largely denied it, only to contradict themselves a few months later.
Yeah, you see, that's the headline I made a video on specifically. So they posted this 13 days ago. I had this posted 6 months ago.
Then I reached out to the academics. And one of the frustrating things was that the evidence seemed to be in the shadows. A single study, a hint in an earnings call, a story from a driver. It was mostly theoretical. Until a few months ago, when I got an email from a guy. I had published a video that argued Uber's newfound profitability came at the expense of drivers and riders. He said, we were at the tip of the iceberg.
Sergio Avidian is actually one of the people who work with the rideshare guy, and yeah, this is really the tip of the iceberg.
We were used to something called a rate card. We were used to getting paid by time and distance.
Then, overnight, the transparency vanished, replaced by a secret algorithm that takes into account potentially hundreds of different variables. They called it upfront pricing.
So this is also something that came up when delivery work was kind of on a boom. Yeah, rideshare drivers seem to have been making more, and they were basing the amount of money they'd make based on time and distance, and there were certain rates that are associated with that. And then they implemented upfront pricing when delivery work just seemed more lucrative with a lot less risk. So there is more to this than most people are giving it credit for.
So with Sergio's help, we decided to test it. We called 7 experienced drivers to a high-traffic area in Los Angeles with the sole purpose of testing if rideshare companies are paying different rates for the same rides.
I don't know if this is a great place to do it, though. You're putting this test in Los Angeles, California, where Prop 22 is so prominent, to where Prop 22 is affecting the gig economy in that area. New York City, Seattle, and California, as well as a couple other places, play by completely different rules than the rest of the country. If I were in this position, I would definitely alter the game here.
At the start, each driver will activate their screen capture software, open up the app, and place their phones on the table. When the experiments are done, the drivers will send their screen recording to Sergio's team, who will then sync and analyze the fares. And then we're going to see what's really going on.
Yeah, you could already see how it's like changing, just mere pocket change, really. Like it could be anywhere from like a couple of cents to like $1. That may not seem like a lot to some people, but let me put it this way. There are over 9.44 billion trips on Uber alone. Let's say they save a penny total on half of those orders. So that is 4.72 billion pennies, $47 million. To us, it's a penny. To them, it is one of many, many pennies. Now, how big of a deal is that really? It's a big deal when you're accounting for the idea that the order really isn't changing that much and they're basing it on the person and not the order itself. Let me put it this way. If they're basing the entire idea of offering me a number because I'm declining orders otherwise, and they're going to raise it for me, that's a different conversation than Dippity Dan, who's going to take it for less. But then again, here's the other thing about that. This isn't a wage thing. At the end of the day, we're not employees, we're independent contractors. They're offering us a deal and someone is willing to take it for less, even if it's by a couple pennies. And that's what they're doing.
He's getting paid $1 more if he goes there, according to the map, and nobody else is. Nobody else is seeing that dollar surge.
Okay, so that's $1 more. It's when you get those bigger numbers, like that's a full $1 more. If it's like a penny or two, I'm not gonna cry about it. But if that guy is getting paid $1 more for the same order and it's not even like they're doing better work, that can be an actual issue.
Lyft was even worse. The price gap wasn't just a little off, it was a lot off. We saw differences of up to $3 to $4 after bonuses.
Okay, yeah, you see, that's where it's an issue. It's not really a problem until it's those bigger numbers. This is why there needs to be a solidified system that's not based on the person. Saving a penny, that's not that big of a deal in like the grand scheme of things. But you know what happens? They take an inch and then they go for the mile, which is exactly what this is here with Lyft. And then you have people taking it to even further extremes, but that's a different conversation.
I contacted Uber and Lyft to see how they would calculate fares. Lyft, well, they never responded. Uber directed me to a blog post. When I explained the experiment's results, they replied by copying and pasting a portion of that same blog post.
You expect them to admit to wrongdoing? That's an unrealistic expectation.
The only thing we didn't account for was any secret test Uber could have been running at the time, which we couldn't because the fare algorithm is secret and the test is secret.
That's the one thing a lawyer would point to. Like, we were testing a new feature and model that we cannot talk about because trade secrets. Like, that's how you would lose that fight.
There's no laws against algorithmic wage discrimination. That article I mentioned at the start suggests that opaque algorithms can easily facilitate violations of anti-discrimination laws.
I don't know if algorithmic wage discrimination is really the best way to put it, because what they're doing is basically throwing out numbers to see who's willing to accept what. And yeah, they're lying about it half the time, but is there a law against them not increasing the value of an order because no one's willing to take it? Not really. You're just ruining the customer experience that way, but that's a totally different conversation.
Uber denies this, but their own research reveals a glaring disparity. Women drivers earn 7% less than men.
Ooh, I didn't see that coming. But one of the things that I've noticed with tests like this, they're gonna find any way they can to get something like this through. If they use a buzz subject like that to do that, of course they're going to.
If you are not an employer subject to and accountable to your workers under the labor laws, then you are powerful firms that are abusing your power under state antitrust, competition law, and unfair and deceptive acts and practices laws.
David is describing the cognitive dissonance rideshare operators have when classifying drivers. They want to have it both ways.
Yeah, they want it both ways. But what they really want is independent contractors that act like employees. The amount of people that are crying about not being paid enough on DoorDash, Uber Eats, and Grubhub are still expecting DoorDash, Uber Eats, and Grubhub to pay more, as opposed to diversifying their gig portfolio and developing an exit strategy, so that way they're treating the gig economy as an income bridge to what would be a long-term goal and not simply the goal.
As an employee, you're making money for someone else, which means benefits, protections, and a boss who can tell you what time to show up.
That is a bullshit claim right there. If you are in business with anybody, both of you are going to make some sort of benefit out of that.
Oh, you're making somebody else money.
You're acting like you're getting absolutely nothing out of it. Now I know that this guy's just trying to paint a narrative as opposed to actually doing what it takes to help gig workers. This is the problem I have with this channel. They say some of the nice things that are right, and then they totally add an employee mindset to the entire thing. They're trying to get rid of the concept of independent contractors as a whole. This is the problem with this channel. Instead of trying to put an employee solution on an independent contractor problem, they're only going to see it painted in one way.
As an independent contractor, you're supposedly making money for yourself, with no benefits or protections, but freedom. You're your own boss.
Exactly. Why are you acting as if that's not the case? What is the word supposedly supposed to do other than paint that narrative?
If these drivers are, as you say, independent, then they need to have true economic independence. We allege that the companies have denied them that economic independence, most importantly, by taking away their ability to set prices for themselves.
What they're not explaining is that we have just as much right to decline an order as they have the right to offer us an opportunity. Would it be nice to have a counter offer option? Sure, but there's more than one way to develop that independence for yourself. You're trying to make it sound like there's only one way to do that. Like I said, diversify your gig portfolio, develop an exit strategy. Stop trying to paint a narrative and play the victim when in reality you have more power and control than you're giving yourself credit for. Honestly, it's kind of nonsense. I hate that I have to hate this video for that reason.
But right now, Uber and Lyft set prices for riders and wages for drivers to maximize one thing: their own profits.
Prices for riders and wages for drivers. This guy's a moron. We're not employees. Stop treating us like employees.
We heard something similar at our roundtable discussion after the experiment. Every participant wanted to be an independent contractor. They like the freedom. They also want Uber and Lyft to treat them like actual independent contractors.
Okay, there's where we can have a little bit of mutual ground here. We do want to be treated like independent contractors, but stop trying to make it sound like we're employees by calling them wages, by claiming we don't have any sort of benefit, by trying to put an employee solution to an independent contractor problem. Like, pick a lane.
When the general counsel of Uber is Tony West and he's the brother-in-law of Kamala Harris, then it tells you that these companies are tight with government.
I would love to hear how people make this a political thing. Please make this a political thing. I would be absolutely rolling if this becomes a political thing, because I guarantee you it's gonna be people who are pro-union and pro-turning us into employees, and then they're gonna see that and they're gonna get real quiet.
There's a reality where drivers could be actual independent contractors, set their own rates on these platforms, and compete for your business. But that's not our world. yet.
And this is why a lot of people are predicting that gig work is going to be a lot more prominent in 2034. And this is where regulation would need to come in. Because if gig work is going to be more controlled in terms of not letting this crap happen to where independent contractors don't really feel all that independent, then this is what's going to end up happening on a much larger scale. That's why there needs to be more, I hate to say government control, but more regulation in general. Or there just needs to be so many more businesses that are gig economy based, that are offering real independent contractor opportunities, to where this conversation is moot and they're losing drivers and they have all this volume but no one to fulfill the orders, so their hand will be forced. One way or another, it's got to happen that way.
Instead, the companies are spending hundreds of millions of dollars rewriting state labor law to reinforce the idea that drivers aren't employees, while using the fine print to handle private challenges.
Yeah, this is where I get a little annoyed too. The fact that they have to get political on a lot of these states and cities, it gets crazy, especially in New York City, where they lost half of their gig workers there because the pay just didn't make sense anymore and it's genuinely dangerous out there. They rearranged the entire model. Like, that's where it got out of hand.
Just because you're exempt from laws governing, for example, unemployment insurance premiums, that doesn't mean you're exempt from antitrust laws and competition laws.
Yeah, if there's one thing that I wish could be removed from a lot of these gig companies, it's the arbitration agreements. When they screw up, this information should be as public as possible. People should know when people do illegal shit. But no, that's not happening here.
In July, the FTC announced it was investigating surveillance pricing. That's the practice of companies using complex algorithms and untold data points to offer personalized pricing. The fear is that prices for something like children's Tylenol will suddenly skyrocket across major online stores just because you typed infant fever into Google.
Ooh, okay, yeah, that's a big issue. Like, imagine you needing a certain type of medicine, but you can't afford it because Uber's algorithm ended up boosting it up. There does need to be stronger laws for that.
Maybe there's an innocent explanation to our fair experiment, but we won't know until the federal government shines a light.
And there's too many people, and there's a lot of people that don't trust the government to actually do the right thing for us anyway. Like, for so long, too many people are tired of how the government puts an employee solution to an independent contractor problem, and that would be a major problem for all parties involved. So to be honest with you, that stuff needs to be handled long before anything else. But there's not a whole lot more to say about this other than simply treating the gig economy as an income bridge to what would be a long-term goal and not the goal. Because yes, we are independent contractors, and the more dependent you are on these companies, the more you're going to see this stuff and get upset about it. And yeah, I'm annoyed at it myself, but I'm not as dependent on Uber anymore, and for good reason. But no matter what exit strategy you have, no matter how dependent you are on these companies, it is vital that you're working with a qualified tax professional to make sure you're doing everything by the book as opposed to these companies. And working with the right tax professional is a big part of that. And that's where GigTax is here to help. As someone who has ventured into self-employment via food delivery apps, the income is promising. That said, you are faced with the challenges of navigating taxes as a self-employed person, transforming your gig into a sustainable business. GigTax was founded by Joseph Mayo, a seasoned gig worker with over 7,000 deliveries across 7 platforms since 2020. They understand the challenges of freelancers, rideshare drivers, couriers, online sellers, and gig workers of all kinds. Their #1 online tax preparation service is designed to maximize your tax savings and save you time, energy, and money. Enjoy exclusive discounts on tax prep services, as well as a range of other benefits such as electronic filing, strategy sessions, year-round direct access to tax pros and financial partners, the client app and portal, tax planning services, quarterly tax reviews, and all of that is absolutely free and incredibly valued benefits when filing with GigTax. Book your free strategy session today at gigtaxservice.com/drivenwyld and enter the code Wyld, all lowercase, to access your special offering. Let GigTax educate and support you on your tax journey, whether you're a gig worker looking to make some extra money or becoming a successful entrepreneur leading an incredible lifestyle. Thank you to Joseph Mayo for emailing me this video and recommending it and making this video possible. Use the link in the description to get started with saving the money you made, as long as making even more along the way. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. As always, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.